You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, all on Georgia Radio Network.
Welcome to episode 89 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. I'm Dave Roberts. With me, she is the actual journalist, smart person, educated person, TV personality, Jessica Szilagyi.
Hey, what's going on?
Oh, how was your week?
It was good. How was yours?
Oh, man, I'm on the right side of the grass. Got an email from a friend yesterday who's a lawmaker, and Chris Severe has popped back up.
Tell us more.
It gets this email. I guess they're sponsoring a bill that is essentially doing the same thing he wanted to do the entire time, and it's modernization of Decency Act. And now he says that, of course, it's the same thing. We're gonna tax porn. And that, of course, will end human trafficking. And it's signed John Gunter Jr., de facto Attorneys General, Special Forces of Liberty.
That sounds so familiar.
Ha! Man, you got to give it to him. He doesn't quit.
I mean, does he have a choice? I don't think he has a choice. What else is he going to do?
Well, it's not like he can practice law anymore. They took his license for being out of his damn mind.
Well, just in Tennessee, right?
Well, I mean, that's where he was licensed to practice law, I believe.
I thought he also had his degree in Texas. I don't know. Or, had... What is it? Like, he was...
I don't know. I wish he'd stop telling people he's an Army veteran because he's damn embarrassing. Like, no, he's not with us.
Well, I understand and I agree. But what is with these elected officials? Like, why do they keep signing on to his causes? I was listening to one of our older episodes because we're working on a really fun project for everyone, hopefully. But I was listening to one of our older episodes and he came up and it was one where I was blasting Casey Cagle and Paulette and we were talking about how before she left office, we wanted to know how she found Chris Severe. Or how Chris Severe found her. And we never got that answer. But I would like to know how any of these people get looped in with him. Like, are we just all, the rest of us, just so overly cautious that we research people before we join a force with them? Or, I mean, well, if someone was asking me to put my name on their bill, I would look them up.
Yeah, put his name into the Google machine. And now there's plenty to come up on him. I mean, you type in Chris S.E. and like the third thing that populates into Google is Chris Severe. And there's the stories out of Kansas and Missouri and all these places where he's been trying to push the same bill. And of course, the reference to him wanting to marry his laptop. And wanting to sue Apple for ruining his marriage.
Yeah. And he was arrested by, what was it? The Big and Rich star?
Yes. It was John Rich.
Yes. Who sued him and I think won. But
I don't know how this guy has any money.
Well, that's another thing. Like, these people keep donating to his cause, and employing him, and
well,
it's honestly a talent. Like, congrats! I can't get people to donate to my cause like that.
Well, he's a parasite, and a parasite is very well suited to finding a host, and he feeds off that host until people realize that he's absolutely nuts and then vote that person out. Bye-bye, Paulette. But the person who said this to me, he was not actually entertaining the idea of introducing this legislation. He kind of shot me a text about it last night. He goes, "You're not going to believe this. Check your email."
Well, it's entertaining for us And we love having the content for the show, but it gets old because I don't want it to be like, I don't want that to be a reality.
Well, but it's important to continue to expose him. He changes his name. The name of his group changes. The name of his legislation changes, but always goes back to the same thing, that he is certifiably insane. And I assume now I'm going to get a notice that I'm being sued, but I won't actually have to go to court. I'll hire Ralston to represent me.
Yes. The joke that will never die or get old.
I have a dad joke making SOB for not being a dad, huh? So anyway, he continues on, and it's going to be Chris Revere and cockroaches that are alive after the world ends. And
these are our opinions and not those of Allah in Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah, screw it. Let him sue Allah in Georgia, too. He hasn't won one yet. So, should Georgia revisit the issue of requiring magistrate and probate judges in Georgia to have law degrees?
Are you criticizing my outline?
I'm criticizing my reading of your outline.
Because I put Georgia in the sentence twice. I just want people to be clear. We're talking about Georgia.
Well, should Georgia require South Carolina judges to have law degrees?
Listen, they've done dumber things, so...
That is true.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so anyway, this is something that comes up... Well, I feel like people whisper about it when we have elections because when they talk about our magistrate and probate judges, they're like, oh, are they an attorney? And then they're surprised to learn that if your population is under a certain amount, you don't have to have a law degree to be a judge in these counties. Most of my counties, neither are lawyers. And, you know, from somebody who, like, I analyze the law all the time and I read it and I use it to my advantage in my articles and when I'm trying to get records and stuff. But I'm not an expert and I don't claim to be. And while I can, I guess I can read it as much as I'd like, but a lot of times I still have to ask for help or ask for somebody else's interpretation or how it's utilized. And we all know that judges aren't usually the types of people that will do that. And so as we continue to see with headlines in the media, specifically in Georgia, we have some probate judges and magistrate judges who have no understanding of the law and continue to violate people's rights and screw people over and then deal with it on the back end of getting a little bit of a reprimand or maybe just stepping down. But Lord only knows how many people they've hurt along the way. And yes, it's true that judges that have law degrees do those things as well. But I mean, it's just, I don't know. What is your perspective on this? Because we talked about the Kim Kardashian. Remember when she was advocating that you shouldn't have to go to law school to be a lawyer? It gets along those same lines. So where are you on this?
You know, the law degree doesn't. I don't know if that is a requirement. Certainly, a member of the bar would be. If you can pass the bar exam.
That's reasonable.
So the education itself. I thought that the Kim Kardashian thing was surprisingly lucid.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we both agreed.
She stopped taking pictures of her ass long enough to make a lucid argument, and I was impressed. But I would like to at least see them be a member of the bar. Now, I'm sure this comes from the idea that counties with smaller populations don't have the numbers of lawyers who are willing to go and take a job on the bench. I'm guessing it doesn't pay as well as private practice.
Well, that's probably true, but I know I have a neighboring county that the magistrate judge also has a private practice, and he just, works in the neighboring county for his defense work, which, I mean, props to him for doing that, because there are lots of attorneys here who are the state court judge in the county and also the juvenile court judge and also a municipal court judge and then a city attorney, and then they have a private practice, and you're just like, what? So I can appreciate that there's a divide there. I've said all along, like, I mean, it would create some logistical problems, so I wouldn't want a law for it, but I wish more places were willing to say, we're not going to have somebody be our judge within this county.
Well, you certainly would think it'd be a campaign issue for the elected positions. But if you want to see the most polite election anywhere, that's running for judge.
Absolutely.
Is at the end of the day, one of you has to argue in front of the other.
That's right. And yeah, I agree with that. And there's just a different level. It's almost like a respect for the office too. I mean,
what?
Yeah.
Dignity?
Some of them get dirty, but I mean, even our like state Supreme Court races, I mean, they really just focus on like court cases that someone has, unless somebody has a jaded past, that's super crazy, but they mostly just focus on cases that they've handled. Right.
And what you don't do is you don't go and say and make accusation that they're cheating on their spouse or something like that, because like 2 months later, you're going to stand before that judge and argue a case. And it would be a great disservice to your client if like 2 months ago, you're saying this guy's cheating on his wife.
Right.
True or not.
I think the population threshold is 96,000. So, I mean, we're not talking about, I mean, there's a good number of counties that, and that doesn't mean that like, just because you don't have that threshold, that's not who, there's still lawyers that run. There's just a lot of counties where the person was not an attorney. And again, I totally recognize that judges abuse their authority all the time, whether they have a law degree or not. But like, there's this case I don't think we've talked about on the podcast, but in Washington County, where the magistrate judge signed a warrant for a woman. This deputy went to the magistrate judge because he and his ex-wife were having issues. She posted something on social media about him, and he didn't like it. And so he went to the judge and asked for a warrant to be taken out. And the judge took out the warrant for criminal defamation, which hasn't been on the books since 1982, I think. Very long time, obviously. But the judge had no idea. The judge put the woman in jail, and she just settled and and he ultimately stepped down, and everyone's blaming the deputies, and the deputies were absolutely wrong. But I blame the judge because he's the one that the state court judge blistered him when Saul got to the courtroom and was like, why are we here? I don't understand why we're here. I don't understand how we got here. This isn't even a real law. And, we don't take off, because the magistrate judge also threatened to ban her from Facebook, like just petty stuff. And I do think that if you have, the threat of losing your law license or being admonished by the Georgia Bar Association, there's value and weight in that, because it is public record. They put it on the website. There's things, you have something to lose when you're an attorney. If you just step down, I dealt with this in Tatnall County. I don't know if some of the people remember, we weren't doing the podcast, but I think it's come up where I was, in a dispute, I guess you could say, with the magistrate judge in Tatnall County. And he had this thing where if he didn't like you, he made it known in open court and in his office and everywhere. And the Supreme Court ultimately sanctioned him for it. And he wasn't a lawyer either. Things that wouldn't happen, I guess a level of pettiness that would not happen with regular judges that are lawyers.
And the post on Facebook was fairly benign. Not that it would make a difference, but it says, Ann Boyd King feeling overwhelmed. That moment when everyone in your house has the flu and you ask your kid's dad to get them, not me, more Motrin and Tylenol, and he refuses.
Which I think, I think we could all tell someone not to put that kind of stuff on Facebook, but let's be honest, like, that's really not that bad for some of the drama we've all seen aired on Facebook between exes.
Yeah, I don't like to see. Actually, I don't really like to see anything heartfelt on Facebook. I'm there for pictures of fish that you caught and jokes and memes. But as far as the people who are just venting and use Facebook to vent, that's super benign. But it doesn't matter. Had she hopped on Facebook, called him an SOB, and said my ex is a scumbag, that's still protected speech. I mean, this is not. Besides not being a lawyer, he threw a woman in jail for speaking. Mm-hmm. And that's one of those things that's got to sink in too, is he threw someone in jail for speech. In jail for speech. It doesn't matter what she was saying. It doesn't matter that he's a deputy. It doesn't matter that he was embarrassed that his friends now know he was too busy to go and get his own kids some Motrin and Tylenol. So, yeah. I mean, that he's no longer a judge, but he honestly had no place on the bench. He obviously didn't have the temperament for it, didn't understand the law, didn't even crack. And if I were sitting on the bench and someone came to me with this case, at least I would crack the book and say, or ask him, in what section of the code do we find this? I mean, isn't that normal to quote the section that you're of what the criminal code is that you're charging someone? Especially if you're going to charge them with a crime.
Yeah. I mean, you're supposed to. Yeah. And I had never heard of it. So, of course, when I'm reading the article when this first all broke and said criminal defamation, I'm like, what is that? And as you go through it, says, then it gets to the point where it says it was repealed or it was struck down as unconstitutional, obviously, 40 years ago. So technically it is on the books, but everybody knows that defamation and libel and slander are all civil matters. Everybody.
With a very high standard.
Yeah. Very
high standard. I mean, in order to actually get somebody for defamation of character, there's a super, super high standard. I see questions on things all the time, but I need a lawyer who can take care of a libel case. Like, yeah, I mean, good luck. I mean, it's super hard to nail somebody on that. The standards, as it should be. So, but we did cover the Tatnall judge when he got his reprimand last year in September. Mm-hmm. Yes. We spoke about it. And it really is great. I mean, he was read for filth and made to stand there. And I know you were just grinning ear to ear.
Oh, no. I was taking notes and just laser focused on what the administrative judge was brought in to say.
Absolutely.
I think it's a conversation worth having, though. I'm not sure, overall, I'm not sure. I think it's a constitutional standard about the judges being lawyers in the counties. But, to me, it just speaks to the conversation of rural Georgia anyway. Like, you want rural Georgia to grow, so put in some standards that require growth.
You know what? Be happy not growing.
If you're not growing, you're dying.
Fine. It'll take longer than the end of my life for the county to die.
Sure.
But it's becoming a metropolitan area is not all it's cracked up to be.
I do agree with that.
I'd love to pack everything up and move out to the country. Just, unfortunately for somebody who owns a business, the more people you have in your county, the more customers you have.
That's true.
But yeah, as far as the law degree, I would think a member of the bar Or someone being elected sheriff. I think you have 6 months to get post-certified after you're elected sheriff. You have 6 months to pass the bar.
Yeah, and when I remember in 2016 when a bunch of people were running for, I guess it was probate judge, and I think only one of them was an attorney. There were 5 candidates. 1 was an attorney, 4 were not, and only one of the 4 said that if the law changed while he was in office, obviously they would be grandfathered in, if they were already serving when the law changed. But he said that he would actually step down because if the law changed, then that was probably in the best interest of the state. And so he would let there be a lawyer appointed or take the helm or whatever, which I thought was an interesting perspective. But,
yeah, that's saying I'm not qualified. I know I'm not qualified. I shouldn't be qualified. But since there's no rule saying I'm not, I can't, I'm going to.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Yeah, there should be a standard, like I said, at least an understanding of the bar. But going sit on the fence. I'm going to get a picket in my ass. The people have the right to elect whoever they want. If that's, I mean, you say we often get the government we deserve. If that's what the people elect, that's what we get. My fear would be that it's a machine to turn out appeals. Why are you appealing? Well, one, the judge is not even a lawyer.
Okay, you win.
Well, I mean, at least you can say that the trial, it would give credence to any complaint that the trial was not properly conducted, to say, look, the judge is not even an attorney. So after beating that to death, a 9-year-old is facing murder charges in Illinois. The judge had to teach him what arson and alleged meant.
Do you want to give a...
Yeah, this is a really sad story.
Yeah.
9-year-old is accused of setting his trailer on fire with the family members in there.
On purpose.
On purpose.
Obviously.
Killing several people. He's been charged as an adult, which begs a lot of questions. And he did not understand what alleged meant, and the judge from the bench had to explain what alleged, and he did not understand the term arson. We're dealing with a grade schooler here. I'm guessing 9 years old is 4th or 5th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Grade schooler sitting in court, being represented by an attorney, and not even understanding the terms that are being thrown at him.
So there was an article on Mother Jones, which I'll post on our Facebook page after the podcast drops, but the transcript, or some of the transcript, is transcribed into the article. And I mean, I'll admit, I don't know if the article was like positioned ahead of time for me to feel compassionate about it. I guess because he's 9, I just have that. I mean, maybe I'm biased. I don't know. But reading it was heart-wrenching because the judge is going through everything, like count 1, count 2, count 3, count 4, and the little boy, the kid's attorney interrupts and says, "Your Honor, I apologize. He just told me he doesn't know what alleged means." Like, they're like on count 5 and he doesn't understand. And I don't understand how we're here. A 9-year-old should be, if a 9-year-old is in trouble and has done something that would be illegal when they're older, then they should be held accountable. But I mean, how could he even consent to decisions with his attorney?
Right. I mean, isn't this why juvenile courts exist?
Well, yeah. But it said, so the National Juvenile Defender Center has this pretty little map, and there's a bunch of states, including Georgia, that have no minimum age for prosecution. So I guess I'm assuming that this was in juvenile court. But again...
Well, no, juvenile court is generally sealed.
Well, that's true, but...
And his name is out. Mother Jones did not name him. But right. his name is out. So this isn't juvenile court. This is big boy court. Now, if he's convicted, he's not going to be thrown in prison.
No, but he can't consent to any of these decisions.
Right.
And I understand that no juvenile can, but you can't make the argument that a 9-year-old understands the judicial process. You did something wrong and you might go to jail. Let's just say that he might, like, that's all that he can comprehend. You did something wrong. You were bad and you broke the law and you might go to jail. That's like the extent of it. I didn't know what alleged meant when I was 9.
Well, and I don't know the specifics of the case. I can't talk. As far as if he was playing with matches, if he purposely set the fire playing, or if he intended to kill people in the trailer, I have no idea. It's going to be very difficult to get that information out of a 9-year-old. I mean, they obviously have pretty good evidence that he did it, but you're right. When you start talking about consent, he can't even give consent to being Mirandized.
Well, and I also have to question, what is the juvenile justice system? I mean, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on all of the states. I can only speak to Georgia, but let's just say this happened in Georgia, and because we don't have a minimum age, so you could be 5 and technically appear in juvenile court.
And lots of trailers.
Right. Right. What are we trying to accomplish by putting a 9-year-old in the system? And are we just setting them up to become a career criminal, or is there any type of, juvenile court does not rehabilitate or coach kids to be better human beings. It just doesn't. It doesn't. The kids that get back on course, it's because of what they have going on at home, or because they transferred out of their home and are in foster care, or they just had a wake up call. But it's 9 times out of 10, it's not handed down from their probation officer or some detention facility away from anyone they know or love or that is loving to them. A 9-year-old, I'm sorry, a 9-year-old still needs to be coddled. I don't care if they're angry and mischievous and law breaking. You still need to love them like they're a child.
Well, the brains aren't developed enough. And look, you're gonna have the people saying, "Well, he killed people." I said, I don't know the context, and are we willing to say that there is a bad seed? That this is a do-over, throw him somewhere, throw away the key, and let him spend the next 70 years of his life locked away from society. Is he that dangerous? And I don't know.
Well, don't they have a cap at how long they can sentence someone as a juvenile?
Yeah, there is. And I don't think that at 9 he can be sentenced even juvie. If he
could he go to one of those camps or something?
I think they go on probation.
That's stupid too.
I think they go on probation, and he's in the system, obviously. But it's my understanding under Illinois law, he doesn't get locked away. He'd go on probation, and if he violated the terms of that probation, he would get locked up. And I think those laws are defended to keep kids out of, criminal universities that are going into juvie.
Well, and as I think about it more as we talk about it, I'm not sure that the states in the map that are gray, that don't have minimum ages for prosecution in juvenile court, I'm not sure that they're wrong, because, if the standard is 12 and you shoot someone at 11, like, as much as what I just said, I believe, I also understand that each case needs to be looked at on an individual basis. But as a whole, I just have to wonder, like, what are we actually trying to accomplish, and is it being accomplished? Because most people will say that the juvenile justice system is a failure, and so, you know.
Well, it's
what is the end goal here?
At what age do you understand the finality of your decisions?
Well, wouldn't that be different for boys and girls? And I'm not saying that to be condescending or like, boys develop at a different age and rate than girls.
Oh no, we're well stupid into our 40s. I know me. Mm-hmm. But at what point do you understand the finality of what you're doing? To take a life. I mean, at what point do you understand that's what happened? And I don't know the answer to it. I'm not, I'm not a parent. I haven't seen that sort of light bulb go on in a kid's head. I have no idea what that line is. Is it 12? Is it 13? Is it 15? Is it 42? I don't know. But at what point do you understand that pulling that trigger, lighting that match means that person's going to be gone off this earth forever? And at what point do you understand that? And, I assume there are experts in that area who might better be able to explain that to us. But I don't think a 9-year-old, a fourth or fifth grader, understands the finality of what he did. He knew he was bad. He knew he set a fire, but I don't know if he understands the finality of those people aren't coming back and you did it. And and when we put people on trial, that's they have to understand what they did. And I would have hoped that this would have been taken care of administratively before ever putting this kid in court.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
You get his public defender, which I assume he has, because and the prosecutor, you put them together and say, look, the prosecutor knows you can't parade a 9-year-old in open court and then go after him. It's a horrible look. It's a horrible look all the way around. So yeah, I don't know how you hold him accountable and not put him in the defendant's chair.
I don't know.
So on both sides of that issue too. Woo!
Well, I mean, juvenile cases are lose-lose.
Oh, absolutely.
Unless you're just trying to punish someone and make them do community service for, burglarizing a place or having minor drug possession charges or whatever the case may be. Like, just, unless it's something like that where no harm, no foul in the scheme of life. The rest of them are tragic. It's terrible.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely it is. So, fired New York City Police Department officer Daniel Pantaleo from the Eric Garner case. This is the guy that was selling loose cigarettes on the street. Was confronted by police. This Pantaleo, in order to arrest this dude, this guy was a big dude. He took him into a chokehold. And he said, "I can't breathe." And ultimately he lost consciousness and died at the hospital.
Did you watch the video?
Yes.
So I watched it again before the podcast because it had been some time since I'd seen it. And he was a really big guy.
And generally speaking, if you can say, "I can't breathe," you're breathing.
Yes.
I mean, air is getting past your voice box.
That's right.
So the ME ruled Garner's death a homicide. result of compression of his neck and chest in the confrontation. Also, poor health. So, he was a big old fat dude that was in poor shape. That certainly wasn't in shape to have a fight.
Well, and I think, I'm not an expert. I'll preface with that. But, you know, the chokehold was against policy, but the compression on his chest, I mean, you're talking about some guys having to tackle a larger guy. And whether you believe that the confrontation was legit, I mean, I don't want to get into all of that because there were multiple officers. There was more than one officer there. So this officer is not to blame alone for the actual confrontation and the stop. But the compression of the chest, I mean, that could happen to you or to me. Like, that's just circumstances of a tussle with officers. You know what I mean? Like, that's not against policy.
Well, and I don't agree with the policy of even having street officers enforcing tax law, because it's selling untaxed cigarettes is what he was accused of doing. I think they call them loosies down there. I don't like the fact that he had to be arrested for that at all. However, that's not the decision of the officer. The officer's there to enforce the law as he's instructed. As far as getting his job back, man, I mean, he violated policy. I mean, he wasn't convicted of a crime, but he did violate policy. I mean, that'll get you fired any job.
Well, I guess the question, and from an HR perspective, is in any other circumstance, had this not been a national headline and a viral video and a 5-year debacle, would it be an offense that would get someone fired if it was noted in their file? Like, if someone else just had put someone in a chokehold, and because it's not that he put him in a chokehold and then he died. It's the violation was that he used a chokehold.
Right. Now, as somebody who's been in a fight and I competed, you know, I was a wrestler in high school, and there are certain holds you can't use. But if I'm, you know, grossly outmatched size-wise, and I'm trying to just get this guy on the ground who's not compliant, I don't know. I don't know if in the middle of a fight, if you can say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I got my arm around your neck without your arm in it. That's bad. I don't know. I think it's a pretty unfair standard to throw on somebody that in the middle of a fight. Yeah, by policy, chokeholds are not allowed. But once you're in that position, you're trying to get the guy to the ground. What else are you supposed to do? And that I don't know. I mean, that would be a question for a police officer.
Well, yeah, it's a question for a police officer. But if you watch any video and then the responses, like everyone, no matter what they do, somebody has a complaint about it. And I'm not saying that sometimes they're not wrong, or sometimes, like, they are wrong sometimes. They make the wrong call sometimes. That happens. But
I don't know why he wants to go back to being a cop.
Well, that's another thing too. I mean, I know why. Because if he's fired, he doesn't get his whole pension. And so if he goes back and he just has, even if he's just a secretary, he gets the full pension when he retires. And he was making $85,000. $85,000. I understand it's New York, but holy cow. That's what he was making when he was fired. So he could get the money back that he's paid in, but he wants the pension realized, obviously. And so
yeah,
I'm not even sure he wants to patrol. I think he probably would be fine just making copies.
I certainly would not want to. If I were in his position, I certainly wouldn't want to be back on the street. I mean, that's going to be I mean, you're going to be a lightning rod. That anytime you arrest somebody, there's going to be a cloud hanging over them as far as abuse goes. But I mean, that's a good point on the getting your retirement. And I will say $85,000 is not that much in New York City.
No, it's not, but it's just hard to comprehend that for a law enforcement officer when you see how poorly officers are paid in other areas of the state or the country, like Georgia. I don't know, maybe South Georgia specifically. But $85,000 living in Georgia, you're making a decent living, particularly if you're a dual income household. You're doing fine. But in New York, especially in the city, you can't afford to live in the city at $85,000. You just can't. No, but a lot of them don't. But I also have to wonder too, like what you were just saying, really, when you said you wouldn't want to be like he'd have it hanging over him and all that. It would also be dangerous for him.
Oh, sure.
I mean, there's people gunning for him, and this is far from over. And people don't understand the process. Like, I don't know if he was on administrative leave or if he was without pay or with pay or what for the last 5 years, but he was only fired this year because you can't do an administrative hearing until after you can, but it sets him up for a lawsuit. And I read somewhere where the New York Police Department had like $200 million or something in settlements in the past couple of years. So they are, I think, a little bit more cautious about who. That's another thing. I think they are cautious about who they terminate because they don't want to just have a frivolous lawsuit for no reason when they could prevent it. And so when this attorney for the officer said that the firing was arbitrary and capricious and reckless, I don't think it was. They had 5 years to think about it.
Well, this attorney believes they've got a case, and they very well might. HR law is
in favor of the employees.
Oh yeah, it's disproportionately in the favor of the employees. When I was a young man, you could walk up to somebody and say, "Pack your crap and get out." And not that and people say, "Well, this is Georgia's right to work state." Well, not exactly. I'm surprised that the police union isn't. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but the fact that he was not found liable is a big thing. It just I don't know if like we said, if the standard was to begin with, if you get caught doing a chokehold, what would have been the punishment? Would it have been termination? Would it have been taking him off the street?
And I think that's a hard question to answer because, I mean, all of us can sit here and say, well, that's kind of a big deal. You could kill someone doing that. So sure, you should be fired. Or you could say as an officer, no, there might be a circumstance where for my own life, I had to use a chokehold to save my own life or the life of my partner or whatever the case may be. It's very easy. Like, I don't think that's an easy question to answer from what would be the other admonishment or reprimand for this in another case, because the next case or the last case have different circumstances.
Right. Well, that's like I said, when you look at the size of the guy there that they were attempting to arrest when he was resisting, you kind of get a better idea of, he didn't just walk up to somebody and give him a chokehold. They were in a tussle. Mm-hmm. And he was non-compliant. Now, again, I think it's a stupid law. I think it's tax violations are not handled in that way on the street. He wasn't selling crack. He was selling cigarettes. So we could argue all day about the pointlessness of going after people for selling loose cigarettes. And they only do that. There's only a market for that because New York is so oppressive with its tax code. But again, sure, none of this has anything to do with the officer himself. So it would be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, with as odd as New York is, they'll probably make him a training officer or something.
Well, and I know that New York Police Department has thousands and thousands of officers, but the damage that this case has done to I don't know, the perception of the, like, just from everything from stopping and having the conversation about the cigarettes to the way the video looks bad, because even, I mean, if you watch the video, even if you believe it's justified, it still looks bad. It's awful to watch that kind of stuff. It's awful to watch officers struggle. It's terrible to watch citizens. It's all just awful. Like, it's not, there are only a select group of people who enjoy this kind of stuff. They enjoy being able to exploit it. For the rest of everybody else, it's just hurting the police department. It's hurting their relations with the community. It's just it's fueling the media. It's just freaking nuts.
Well, it also came in at a time when the Black Lives Matter thing was going on, and the hands up, don't shoot. I mean, it was perfect political fodder.
Yeah.
And that certainly is not the fault of this officer. But talking about justice brings us to the presidential platforms. We have Julian Castro.
It never gets old.
It never gets old. Well, that's how he pronounces it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have...
Yes, but I think the way that you pronounce it just adds a little something extra. I appreciate that that's how he says his own name. But you're Dave from Florida.
Well, I grew up around a bunch of Cubans, too.
Well, that explains a lot.
What are you saying about Cubans?
Nothing. We talked about his platform.
Yes.
20 episodes ago. So just scroll on back through your feeds, y'all.
Then now we have, we're getting close on time. Pete Buttigieg published his op-ed on justice reform, and he wants to reimagine policing.
Yeah. So he wrote this op-ed. It went out, I guess, last week in a bunch of mega mainstream media outlets. And it tied back to his plan that is called the Douglas Plan, and it's for Black America. Literally, that's what it says on the website. That alone, I mean, is policing, since why should we have policing for different races? Why, if you want neutrality in policing and the justice system, then why are you creating a plan that's for a specific faction of the population? But he had some good ideas. Like, he wants to get rid of mandatory minimums. He wants to get rid of incarceration for minor drug, or just mere possession, not minor, but for mere possession. Of course, he's talking about the federal level, and of course, legalizing marijuana. And then I'm not a huge fan of incentivizing stuff, but he wants to give more funding from the feds to state and local agencies that decide to use body cameras, which I don't have a problem with. I mean, in the scheme of this plan, it's really not that bad. But he wants to raise the standard for lethal force and create a 4-year National Police Academy.
Okay.
The National Police Academy, to me, is like the most 4 years?
Right. Now, keep in mind, a lot of officers already have a 4-year degree in criminal justice. I mean, this portrayal we have of officers being uneducated really is not accurate. But on the point of for Black America, you can't. I mean, you have equal protection under the law. We all have equal protection under the law. It is not for white America. It's not for Black America. It's not for Julian Castro's America. So that's one thing. Him talking about not prosecuting possession, stupid. You know why?
Repeal the laws.
Well, nobody gets popped for possession on the federal level. It's a state issue. He doesn't understand federalism.
I mean, there are I see them on the DOJ press releases. It's not like it was in the 80s and early 90s. It's different now, but they're still there.
Yeah, but who's the FBI popping for a quarter bag of weed in their pocket?
Oh, no, not minor drug possession, but he doesn't want people to be in prison if they're only possessing. He wants that to be focused on trafficking and distribution and
right. So really, the only way you're going to get popped
manufacturing
at the federal level for personal possession is going to be being Mike Vick and trying to carry weed to the airport.
Or another crime. Like it's just something for them to attack on.
Yeah, it's a enhancer. So at the federal level now, if you're running for governor, and that's what he wanted to do, hey, that's something you could do. It certainly as mayor of Indianapolis, right? That's something that he can do is instruct his police chief not to arrest for possession. But that's a state issue. Now, if you want to go and take pot off of the move it to a Schedule 2 or Schedule 3, or remove the scheduling from it altogether and lump it in with alcohol, hey, that's great. I don't know how. I mean, nobody's done it yet.
Right.
Trump's has no appetite to do it. Trump hasn't even rescheduled it to a 2, which is what cocaine is. Because cocaine has legitimate uses, according to the FDA, one of which being Novocaine. So pot is actually scheduled higher than that. So we could take a huge step forward with the medical uses of marijuana just by rescheduling it, and Trump hasn't done that. So on that end, yeah, that's fine. But the not going after for a simple possession. You're talking about 20 people a year, maybe. The most of the people who are sitting in jail for possession of any narcotic are at the state level. As far as raising the standard for lethal force, again, that's only going to cover the feds. The states have their own issue. They prosecute their own crimes with their own officers.
See, what's dangerous about that is. He in his plan and in his op-ed said too many states and cities use a, quote, reasonableness standard for use of force. Some lack any laws governing use of force. Well, he and I think Biden and someone else, they want to the word was reinvigorate the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division and investigate these complaints for lethal force. My thing is that if you set a standard at the federal level, and then you go in and investigate these states or local agencies, they're going to put everyone away and throw the book at everyone who has a standard that is set in a policy that may be, decades old, but doesn't comply with the federal standard for policing. And the other thing that enrages me is, why does a police officer have to make a higher standard to defend their own life?
Right. Defending your life is defending your life. And Pete knows better. He does.
Sure, but it sounds nice for his...
It sounds very nice for him trying pandering to black voters. And that's all it is. Biden hasn't done anything to secure that block of voting. And I think it's ridiculous to lump all black folks in with one group as a block of voters, because everybody has individual issues that are important to them. But yeah, this is pandering. And Pete, no,
what a shaft to the people.
Oh yeah.
Excuse me, the people in Brooklyn who are suing are all white.
Well, here's the thing. Pete understands rules of engagement. I mean, he's pandering on this one. And look, I don't dislike Pete Buttigieg. He seems like a decent enough fellow. I don't think he has the wherewithal to run for president. I mean, he's mayor of a city, and not a giant city at that. I'd grab a beer with him. But No, in the 4-year academy to become a police officer, that's absurd. First of all,
who's going to pay for that?
Well, who's going to pay for it? But who the hell's going to go do that?
Well, and why are we having a conversation about student loans and the cost of education, and you're going to make it more expensive to become a police officer when the pay is crap?
Right. Why am I going to go spend $100,000 for to go to some national university to learn how to be a police officer, and then go work in Brooklyn for $20,000 a year?
And it says we will promote bias-free policing by creating a 4-year national police academy. Humans have bias no matter what. We are victims of our circumstances. We are products of our experiences. You cannot erase bias. We all have it. Whether it's a bias to be unbiased, like you cannot ignore where people come from.
Right. We're not machines. We are a culmination of our experiences.
Yes.
And look, if you grow up in Crackworth and over in Ackworth, you're going to have a certain bias. You see somebody who looks a certain way, like, that's a meth head. That's going to. It just you can't. Not say that gives you the reasonable cause to go and stop somebody, but it's a culmination of your experiences. And even if you were 100% bias free coming out of this university, I don't know, to use electroshock therapy or something, I don't know. After a few years on the job, you're going to build those biases back up, or those prejudgments back up. It all sounds really cute and really pretty on a campaign mailer or as a piece of pandering propaganda, but it's absolutely unworkable.
So there's 2 other points. I know we're running really short on time, but there are 2 other points of his plan that I labeled meh because they have upsides and downsides. One is to create a federal database to document use of force and track officers who are fired. And the second is to require the publishing of use of force data, surveillance, and other stats to be eligible for federal dollars. So I think it was USA Today, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, put out a massive spreadsheet of all of the officers who had been reprimanded or fired by their state agencies. Do you remember that?
No.
Well, it was a cluster of information but didn't really offer anything because states all keep it different, or keep data differently. I am not sure I'm all for transparency, and I think the information should be easily available, but I'm not sure that a federal database really accomplishes anything other than shame. And I know instances where officers were fired simply because they were whistleblowers or they were the ethical person in an agency. So I'm not a fan of just having something like that. The other one with the use of force and the surveillance, I'm not so concerned with the use of force, although I think it's interesting data because I'm a nerd, but the stats on how they're using stuff, and specifically things like civil forfeiture, like our reporting requirements for that are garbage. So I would love to see that kind of stuff published more. Like, this is how we're spending our money, and this is the kind of equipment we have. And I mean, that stuff should be public.
Well, as far as being fired, that you have a resume, and if you go to apply for somewhere else, well, why did you leave the Brooklyn Police Department? Well, because we were pulling people over and then telling them if they complained, we put them in jail. Or what was you left your last job? Well, I was fired. You still have a resume, and you still have to justify to the next person to get hired. There's no reason to put that out. And like you said, you could be fired for anything. You could have been fired for not showing up to work on time, 10 years ago, and right. Whatever it is. So the federal database, first of all, it's onerous. There's no way you can compile that much data. There are thousands and thousands of municipalities in this country. There's just no way that the government can't run basic websites. They can't keep their own insurance website up and running. How in the hell would they maintain this much data? I mean,
well, and not to be rude, but is there not more important data that I would love? Like, you want to mandate things for state and local governments to publish in order to get federal funds? Let's start with the budget.
Right.
Like, there's a lot more basic things that need to be mandated before we get to this point.
But it looks really good when you're trying to pander to folks.
Ugh. Well, his plan sucks.
All right. Jessica, closing thoughts.
I don't really have a closing thought, just a tidbit of information. So there's just a lady who was arrested in Crawford County. She worked at the Board of Education for 15 years, and she was arrested for theft by allegedly stole more than $60,000. It took them 2.5 years to figure it out, which is neither here nor there, but I just really wanted to commend her for her honesty, because she supposedly left a note. When they figured it out, she just resigned and never came back to work. And supposedly she left a note saying that she did it because she felt like she wasn't being compensated properly. And so I just appreciate that she was willing to tell us all why she robbed the taxpayer coffers, allegedly.
Allegedly. Well, luckily, you don't have to explain to me what that means.
Because you're not 9.
Because I'm not 9. Katie Hill resigned last week, and she is the congresswoman out of California that seems like a lot of fun. But she was having an affair with a staffer. That's not so interesting to me, but the fact that she's got $2 million in campaign coffers that were raised for her reelection campaign, and she just resigned. It'll be interesting to see if she offers refunds or if she's going to buy herself a position somewhere by donating to another campaign. So that'll be interesting to see in the coming weeks. So thank you very much for listening. If you like what you heard, please like and share us on social media. Give us a rating of 4 or 5, whatever the max amount of stars is. For Jessica Szilagyi, I'm Dave Roberts. Have a great week.